Ryan stood at the edge of the shuttle door as it opened with a slow hiss, and the warm air of the alien world kissed his skin for the first time as the light of twin suns painted golden lines on his face. He stepped down onto the soft blue grass, feeling like he had entered a dream. He had trained for this mission for months, but nothing could prepare him for what was about to happen. The planet Xylara had only recently opened its borders to human visitors, and Ryan was one of the few chosen to represent Earth in this peaceful exchange. He expected science meetings and formal greetings, not what waited in the forest nearby. Two figures watched him through glowing purple leaves, their eyes wide and full of curiosity. One was Nara, gentle and graceful, with silver hair flowing down her back like a river of light. The other was Vexa, bold with fire in her amber eyes and dark green skin that shimmered in the sun. They both looked at him, then looked at each other, then back at him again. And neither moved, neither blinked. Like wild animals who had found something rare and refused to back down, Nara stepped forward first, her voice like a soft breeze, saying she had seen him in her dream, that he was hers. Vexa pushed past her and claimed she had seen him in the fire vision during her tribe ceremony, and that he belonged to her. Ryan stood frozen. He had no idea what was happening. He tried to speak, but they circled him like he was some ancient treasure from the stars. They both grabbed one of his arms at the same time, pulling gently but firmly. Nara said she would show him her crystal garden and make him a bed of soft light. Vexa said she would teach him the warrior dances and feed him the best fruits of her land. Ryan stammered, trying to ask if there was a translator nearby, or maybe someone else in charge, but the girls were not listening to each other, only to their own hearts and instincts. Two sweet alien girls from rival villages who both believed they had found their mate. He was dragged gently down to paths at once, until finally he sat down on a glowing stone in confusion. They stood over him now, arguing in their strange, soft language. Hands on hips, voices rising like waves crashing over gentle shore. Soon others from the village gathered, and whispers passed through the air. Some laughed, some looked shocked. One elder with braided horns stepped forward and asked Ryan if he knew what the claiming meant. He shook his head slowly. The elder told him that when Xylaran women both claimed a male, it meant a sacred trial must be held, a trial that would end with a choice or a rejection, but never both. Ryan's head spun. He had arrived just minutes ago, and now he was caught in something he could not even understand. The girls stood on either side of him, proud and determined. Nara touched his hand gently and whispered that he felt like the peace her heart had always searched for. Vexa leaned close with a smirk and said that he smelled like fire and courage, and she wanted to keep him forever. He didn't know what to say. He didn't want to hurt anyone. He didn't want to choose. He barely knew them, but something deep inside him, something he could not explain, began to stir. Maybe it was the gravity of this planet, maybe it was their eyes so full of something ancient and honest, or maybe it was the way they looked at him, not like an outsider, but like someone they had waited for all their lives. That night, he was given a place in the guest tree home above the glowing waters, but when he entered, he found two beds prepared, one shaped in silver light and the other in warm emerald vines. Both had gifts beside them. One had soft bread wrapped in leaves, the other had a carved stone with his name written in their language. He looked out the window and saw them sitting under the moonlight, still watching, still waiting. The stars above shimmered with strange constellations, and for the first time, Ryan felt not like a visitor, but like someone caught in something bigger than any mission or map. This was not just diplomacy. It was fate, to hearts reaching for him with equal hope, and he had no idea how to answer, but he knew one thing: he could not run. He had to face whatever came next with respect, with honesty, and with the courage to understand a world where love could arrive with no warning. And in two beautiful voices at once, the morning light crept through the sky like flowing gold as Ryan opened his eyes and felt the strange warmth of the tree home wrap around him like a soft whisper from the stars. He sat up slowly, unsure if last night had been a dream, but then he saw The two gifts beside his bed still untouched, one from Nara and one from Vexa, each filled. With care and quiet hope, he stepped out onto the wooden bridge that led from the home into the open air, and there they were, waiting already. Nara in her silver robe, like flowing mist, and Vexa in her deep red cloak, like a flicker of fire, they stood. On opposite sides, not speaking to each other, only watching him with eyes full of silent questions. The elder from yesterday approached, carrying a long curved staff carved with symbols. Ryan could not read. His voice was steady as he spoke in both. Zalaran and translated Earth tongue, he said. Today begins the ceremony of choice, and Ryan would be given one full day with each girl before he must decide. He said refusal to choose would bring shame and sadness, and both girls would be forbidden. To approach him again, Ryan's heart pounded. He looked at Nara, then at Vexa. He did not want to hurt either one. They had done nothing wrong except open their hearts too fast too. Soon maybe, but it was pure, and it was real, and Ryan had seen it in their eyes. He took a deep breath and nodded, agreeing to the custom. Though a part of him trembled. Nara was chosen first, and she reached out her hand with grace, leading him down a glowing path lined with floating petals. The air shimmered with soft colors and tiny creatures that hummed near his shoulder like fireflies. Made of crystal, she brought him to a garden filled with music, made not by instruments, but by the flowers themselves. When the wind passed through the stems, the sound was like chimes and lullabies woven into one. She spoke softly, telling him stories of her people and their belief in harmony and soul threads that connect hearts. Across stars, she placed his hand on a glowing stone, and it pulsed warmly. She said it was reacting to his spirit, and she smiled with a softness that made something in Ryan's chest ache in a way he had never known. They sat by a quiet pool, and she sang to him, her voice gentle and full of longing. She gave him fruit that tasted like sweet snow, and water that felt like peace. He asked her why she wanted him so quickly, and she looked down, then said, sometimes the stars whisper, and sometimes the heart answers before the mind can understand. Night he returned to the guest home, feeling dazed and full of questions. Then it was Vex's turn, and she did not walk. She ran, pulling him through the jungle with laughter and daring. She showed him the wild side of Zylara, where animals danced in the shadows and trees moved when you blinked. She took him to the edge of a cliff where wind roared like a beast, and they stood together, arms wide, like wings catching the air. She hunted with him, teaching him how to use a small spear, and then cooked the strange beast over open flame, telling him stories of battles and dreams of finding a partner who could stand beside her without fear. She said she did not need soft words. She needed someone strong enough to see her not as a trophy, but as a warrior with fire in her blood. When the sky turned violet, she brought him to a cave where glowing stones lit the walls with red and gold. They lay side by side, not touching, only speaking, and she told him she had never shared her story with anyone before. Ryan asked her why she was willing to fight for someone she just met, and she said because when she saw him, her soul shouted, and she always listened to the fire inside the. Next morning, Ryan stood again before the elder, and the crowd had gathered, curious and full of whispers. Nara and Vexa stood side by side, not speaking to each other, but both holding something delicate in their eyes. Ryan felt torn. He saw beauty and strength in both. He saw truth and longing in both, and as he opened his mouth to speak, his heart squeezed tightly. He looked at Nara, then at Vexa, then back again, then took one slow step forward and said the words that froze the air and widened every eye. I choose both, he said, with voice clear like a sunrise. I cannot break either heart, for both are already part of Mania. Heavy silence followed, and the elder raised his staff high. The rules forbade such a choice. The traditions would be broken, the laws of love tested, and yet Ryan stood firm, eyes full of something stronger than fear. He said he did not come to divide, but to unite, that if love could exist in two hearts, Then why must it be torn? And the crowd began to murmur, not with anger, but wonder, and the elder stepped back his face unreadable as the high priestess was summoned from the ancient temple. Her voice would decide what came next. As the high priestess entered the clearing, silence swept over every face, and even the smallest children stopped their games. The old woman's long blue robes shimmered with silver beads that caught the morning sun. Her eyes were deep and sharp. As the night sky, she walked straight toward Ryan, who stood between Nara and Vexa, feeling the weight of 1,000 years on his shoulders. The high priestess lifted her hands, and the air turned cold. She spoke in the ancient tongue first, then in broken earth language so Ryan would understand. She said 2 hearts cannot claim one unless 3 souls become one, and only the trial of unity can decide what cannot be divided by words. Alone, everyone gasped at the announcement, for the trial of unity was only spoken of in old stories, never seen in living memory. Some said it was a test of courage. Some called it a curse for those who dared break tradition, yet here. It was now real and waiting in the eyes of the village and in the trembling hearts of the 3 standing before the council. The high priestess explained that trial would begin at sunrise and end at the last moonrise on the 3rd day. If all 3 could survive together, face the wild together, protect each other without turning back or breaking trust, then the bond would be allowed, and if even one failed, then all would be banished from the village. Forever. Ryan looked at Nara and Vexa. Both faces were tense, but no fear, only a deep calm determination was in their eyes. He nodded once, then reached for their hands, and they both held him without a word. In that moment, the crowd broke into whispers. Some saying it was foolish, some saying it was brave, but none could look away from the 3 who stood in the center of something new and dangerous. When the night fell, a feast was held, but Ryan could barely eat. He kept thinking of what tomorrow would bring. The jungle outside was wild and full of unknown dangers, but he worried less about beasts and more about hearts. Would they stay united or fall apart under the test? Nara sat beside him, speaking quietly of old songs that promised hope, even in darkness. Vexa grinned and told him she could wrestle any wild beast as long as he watched her back the next morning. Before the sun had risen, the high priestess led Ryan, Nara, and Vexa to the edge of the sacred forest. She handed each of them a simple bag filled with dried fruits and herbs, and a small knife made from the tooth of a crystal wolf. She touched their foreheads with a line of silver paint and told them that trust was their only real weapon, and then, with a sweep of her staff, she sent them into the forest, and the crowd disappeared behind the thick blue trees. Inside the forest, every sound was louder. The wind rustled strange leaves that glowed faintly in the shadows. Shadows moved that did not always belong to animals. Nara led them to a stream where they filled their flasks with cool water and washed their faces. Vexa kept watch, her eyes sharp for danger, but always checking that Ryan was close. Hours passed as they walked deeper into the wild. Sometimes Nara and Vexa argued over which path to take. Sometimes they laughed as Ryan stumbled over roots or tried to say Zalaran words and failed. Every small moment was a test, every decision a chance to prove they could work as one. In the middle of the day, a thunderous roar shook the ground, and a huge beast with 6 legs and scales, like burning metal, crashed through the undergrowth. Vexa shouted to Ryan to climb a tree as she grabbed a branch and swung upward. Nara chanted a song that made the leaves shimmer, and the beast slowed for a moment, giving Ryan just enough time to grab her hand and leap onto the lowest limb. They watched as the beast circled below its tail, slashing the grass in angry waves. Vexa reached into her bag for a pouch of sparkling dust. She threw it into the air, and the beast stopped, its eyes wide, as if hypnotized. Then it turned and ran back into the darkness, leaving the 3 shaking but alive. Ryan thanked both girls, his heart pounding with relief. For a moment, Nara and Vexa smiled at each other, not as rivals, but as survivors, and something shifted between them, as if the fight for one had become the fight for all. That night, they found shelter under a large stone arch covered in glowing moss. Ryan started a small fire and Nara prepared food, while Nyxia sharpened her knife. The stars above flickered in strange patterns, and for the first time, Ryan felt a warmth, not just from the fire, but from the presence of both girls who now sat close beside him. They spoke of their fears and hopes. Nara dreamed of peace and music. Nyxia dreamed of adventure and glory. Ryan admitted he was afraid of choosing wrong, but tonight he felt stronger with both beside him. As sleep came, the three huddled together, their hands linked in silent promise. As the first day of the trial ended, the three had survived not just the wild, but the first true test of unity. And in the dark of the sacred forest, new feelings began to bloom between all three hearts. A sun rose slowly over the tall trees, painting the jungle with golden fire. As Ryan opened his eyes, he felt the soft breath of Nara on his shoulder, and the steady warmth of Nyxia on his other side. They had all slept together beneath the stone arch last night, their hands joined even in sleep. He remembered the dreams he had during the dark hours, dreams of laughter, dreams of hands reaching for him. Dreams where the three of them ran together under two bright moons, as if nothing in the world could ever break them apart. As the new day began, Nara was the first to rise. Her gentle voice woke the others, and she led them to a pool of clear blue water hidden behind thick vines. She taught Ryan how to wash his face in the Zelleran way, how to cup the water in both hands and let it run down his cheeks as a sign of hope for the day ahead. Nyxia watched and rolled her eyes, but even she smiled when Ryan splashed her with a handful of cold water. Laughter echoed across the quiet forest, and for a moment, it felt as if the trial was only a game, a secret adventure between three friends there. Peace did not last long. A sudden cry cut through the stillness, and Nyxia sprang to her feet, pulling her knife from her belt without hesitation. Ryan followed close behind, his heart thudding like a drum. Nara moved more carefully, picking up her bag and whispering to the plants as if asking for their blessing. They moved as one, now deeper into the jungle, where the sounds grew stranger and the light faded into green shadows. They soon found the source of the cry. It was a small animal trapped in a patch of sticky vines, its fur matted and its eyes wide with fear. Nara knelt beside it, murmuring words of comfort in her language. Nyxia hacked at the vines with her knife, working quickly. Ryan tried to help by pulling at the thorns, careful not to hurt the creature. Together, they freed the animal, and Nara sang a short melody that calmed it. The animal nuzzled her hand, then ran off into the wild. The three watched it disappear and felt a new sense of pride growing between them. As they walked onward, the jungle grew more dangerous. Thick roots twisted across their path, sharp thorns hung from the trees, and strange calls echoed through the leaves. Nyxia led the way now, her eyes sharp for danger, her steps bold and fearless. Nara stayed close to Ryan, offering words of encouragement. Whenever he stumbled or lost his balance, together they navigated the obstacles, each helping the others without question. When the sun was high above their heads, the three reached a clearing filled with flowers of every color. Nara gasped with delight and began to weave the blossoms into crowns for each of them. Nyxia pretended not to care, but she did not take off her crown when Nara placed it on her head. Ryan laughed and wore his proudly, feeling like a king in a world made of dreams. Their moment of joy was interrupted by a low rumble. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, and suddenly a wall of insects poured from a hole in the earth, black and buzzing with hunger. Nyxia grabbed Ryan's hand and ran, pulling him back toward the trees. Nara followed close behind, singing a song that made the insects slow just enough for them to escape once. Safe beneath the thickest branches, the three collapsed in a breathless heap. Ryan could not stop laughing from the rush of adrenaline. Nara smiled and pressed a flower into his hair. Nyxia shook her head, but her eyes sparkled with pride. She said he was braver than she expected, and maybe even worthy of surviving the sepsisaster. Maybe even worthy of serve. Myvi, I coasted love. Long-lasting color. Nara smiled, and mellow lasting. Nara smiled and pressed a play M.A. smile. May smiles concede a live scave. Nay sound scave. My z-sills. My salas. My salesa ev. My missic away. Sepet it. My says. My bisit side. I uncaral it's I am all sit it. Kiss it be sass it to sit. It's it. Go see to lux. It's kittitikaka. Kittusit it. It's Cupitis all will be it edis gates the static sensitive with that but if the sales it so the pay that jungle. As night began to fall, the trio built a shelter from wide leaves and strong branches. Working together without any words needed, each knew what to do and where to help as the stars blinked on in the sky above. Ryan cooked the last of their dried fruit over the small fire, and Nara told stories about the spirits who lived in the heart of the forest. Vexa added her own tales full of wild hunts and daring escapes, and soon the three were lost in laughter again. Before sleep came, Ryan spoke quietly, saying he had never felt such a strong bond with anyone on Earth. He thanked both girls for trusting him and for not giving up even when the path grew hard. Nara took his hand and promised she would never leave his side. Vexa squeezed his shoulder and told him that as long as he kept fighting, she would fight too. That night, the jungle was quiet, the animals at peace, as if the forest itself watched over them. And as Ryan drifted into sleep with Nara and Vexa beside him, he realized that the trial was no longer about winning or losing. It was about learning to trust, to care, to build something new from three separate hearts, and he was ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. When morning came, a soft mist floated over the jungle, and Ryan woke to the sound of Nara humming an old Zalaran melody. He watched her fingers gently braid flowers into Vexa's wild hair, while Vexa tried to pretend she did not care, but every so often she smiled at Nara with a secret look of gratitude. Ryan stretched his arms and felt the aches of the last days in every muscle, but also a new energy he had not known before. Together they had survived dangers, and now something stronger than fear bound them. As they packed their things, Ryan felt the weight of the coming day pressing down on him. He knew the final part of the trial would not be easy. Last night, he had dreamed of fire raining from the sky and shadows chasing them through the forest, and when he told the girls his dream, they only nodded. For in Zalaran stories, dreams sometimes warned of real danger. They followed the river deeper into the wild, its water shimmering with strange colors under the early light. Nara pointed out the glowing fish that danced in the current, while Vexa hunted for fresh fruit in the trees. Soon they heard a strange, distant roar, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Vexa signaled for silence as the three moved into the precipice. I moved into the thick ferns to hide. A massive beast appeared by the river, its skin covered in golden scales and its eyes burning red with hunger. Ryan's heart hammered as the creature sniffed the air, searching for the scent of intruders. Nara whispered a song to the plants around them, and slowly the ferns curled tighter, giving them extra cover. But then a branch snapped under Vexa's foot, and the beast turned its head with a deep, angry growl. Without thinking, Vexa leapt between Ryan and the beast, holding her small knife ready. Ryan shouted for her to stop, but she only grinned and shouted back for him to run. Nara pulled at Ryan's arm, her face pale with worry, but Ryan refused to leave Vexa alone. He ran forward, grabbed a long branch, and swung it at the beast's snout. The creature howled in pain and turned on Min. That moment, Nara began to sing louder, her voice shaking the leaves from the trees. The song wove around the beast like an invisible net, and the creature stopped frozen, as if under a spell. Vexa lunged forward and slashed the beast's paw just enough to make it back away in confusion. The beast stumbled, then lumbered back to the water, leaving the three trembling and breathless. Vexa laughed breathlessly and called Ryan foolish for risking his life, but her eyes shone with pride. Nara hugged both of them at once, tears in her eyes. She said they were stronger together than apart, and Ryan believed her more than ever. The sun climbed higher, the jungle grew hotter, and the three pressed on, searching for shelter before the next trial would find them. Nara found a cave hidden behind a curtain of moss, and they ducked inside, grateful for the cool darkness. Vexa checked the entrance for danger, while Ryan helped. Nara started a small fire. With the last of their supplies, they shared what little food they had left and told stories to keep their spirits. A live night crept in quickly, and with it came a storm. The sky outside lit up with flashes of red lightning, and the roar of thunder shook the cave. Ryan gathered Nara and Vexa close as the storm raged. He wrapped his arms around both and promised he would protect them, no matter what the wind screamed through the trees. But inside the cave, their small fire kept them warm. The storm finally faded. Vexa stood and declared she would not let fear win. She led Ryan and Nara outside into the night air, where the stars glittered brighter than ever above them. She showed them how to move with the shadows, how to hide from predators, and how to use the stars to guide their path. Nara taught Ryan the names of the constellations, while Vexa made jokes about which ones looked like old enemies. Together, they walked through the quiet forest, following the river until they reached a clearing bathed in silver light. There they stopped and simply looked at each other with new eyes. Ryan realized he no longer saw two rivals, but two allies, two friends who had risked everything for him and for each other. Nara reached for his hand, Vexa gripped his shoulder, and Ryan felt the bond between the three grow even deeper. They spent the rest of the night sharing hopes and fears under the silent sky, and by the time the sun began to rise again, Ryan knew that whatever waited for them at the end of the trial, they would face it together, not as three strangers, but as something new, as one heart and three souls, ready to fight for a place in each other's world. A cool wind swept through the forest as the last day of the trial began. Ryan blinked sleep from his eyes and listened to the gentle sound of Nara humming her song of hope, while Vexa sharpened her knife with a careful focus that made her look both strong and kind. The fire they had built was almost out, and the soft light of the dawn crept through the branches above, making the world shimmer with a promise of something new. The three stood together at the edge of the clearing, breathing in the fresh air and preparing for what would come next. Ryan felt his heart beating hard with both excitement and worry. He reached for Nara's hand, and she squeezed it with a calm confidence that steadied him. Vexa grinned at them both and promised that whatever challenge waited, she would never run away. The sky above was still pale and full of stars fading into the light, as if even the universe was watching to see what they would do. They moved deeper into the forest, now following a path that twisted through towering trees and over tangled roots. Every sound around them felt sharper. Every step brought new questions and new hope. The day before had shown them what they could survive together. But today, the real test would be whether they could hold on to that unity when the world turned against them. Long after sunrise, the three came upon a wide river, blocking their way, its current swift and cold with jagged rocks beneath the surface. Nara wanted to find a safe place to cross farther downstream. Vexa wanted to swim across right away without fear. Ryan hesitated, unsure which path was better. He listened to both sides and suggested they look for something to help them cross together. After searching along the riverbank, they found a fallen tree, half submerged in the water. It looked old, but strong enough to hold their weight. Nara crossed first, her arms stretched out for balance. Vexa followed with a wild laugh, daring the river to knock her down. Ryan went last, his heart pounding as the water rushed below. But he made it across, and the three hugged on the other side, laughing with relief and pride as they pushed forward. The sky darkened with thick clouds, and the smell of rain filled the air. The forest grew quiet, and Ryan knew something was about to change. Lightning flashed in the distance, and a heavy wind began to shake the branches above. Nara pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders. Vexa motioned for them to move quickly before the storm caught them out in the open. They found shelter. In a cave carved deep into the hillside, the entrance was hidden by thick ferns, and the inside was cool and dark with old markings on the stone walls. Nara traced the symbols with her fingers and whispered that they told stories of ancient trials and old lovers who had faced impossible tests. Vexa gathered sticks for a small fire, while Ryan searched for dry leaves to make a badaz. The storm broke outside with thunder shaking the earth. The three sat around the fire and spoke about their fears. Ryan admitted he was afraid that even if they survived the trial, the village would never accept their bond. Nara confessed she feared losing the trust they had built. Vexa said she was not afraid of anything, except being alone again after finding something so rare. The wind howled louder than ever, and rain hammered the rocks outside. But inside the cave, the fire was warm, and the three huddled close together. Ryan told them stories of Earth about quiet lakes and big cities and families who cared for each other. Nara listened with wide eyes and asked if people on Earth ever shared love in strange new ways. Vexa snorted and said if they did not, they were missing out. They were missing out, though. The three left the cave and followed the trail toward the edge of the jungle, where the trees began to thin and the land opened up beneath a clearing sky. They saw a rainbow stretching across the valley, and for a moment, all the pain and fear seemed far away. Nara took Ryan's hand. Vexa wrapped her arm around his waist, and together they stood in the light, feeling the bond between them grow even stronger. Day was not over yet. As the sun set, the final challenge came suddenly from the shadows at the edge of the valley. A group of wild animals emerged, blocking their path, growling and hungry. Vexa stepped forward, ready to fight, but Ryan stopped her instead. He spoke softly to the animals, remembering what Nara had taught him about kindness and respect. Nara sang a gentle song, her voice trembling but full of hope, and the animals hesitated, sniffing the air before turning away back into the wild. Night fell at last, and the three walked side by side beneath the stars. The trial was almost finished, and they knew they had passed every test together. Ryan looked at Nara and Vexa, his heart full of love and wonder, and he whispered that he would choose them both again and again, no matter what the world said. The future was waiting, and they would face it together, one heart and three souls, walking forward as one. The stars faded as the new day began, and Ryan stood with Nara and Vexa at the edge of the valley, where the jungle opened to the wide village plain. They were tired, but their hearts were full of hope, for they knew they had survived every danger of the wild. Together they had faced fear, hunger, storms, and beasts, and not once had their bond broken or their trust wavered. As the sun rose slowly, the three made their way back toward the village, the path lined with bright flowers that seemed to welcome them home. When they reached the village gate, a crowd had already gathered. Everyone had waited through the night to see if the three would return together. The high priestess stood in front, her robes gleaming in the sunlight, her face unreadable as she looked from Ryan to Nara to Vexa and then back again. Ryan felt the weight of every eye in the village and took a steady breath, while both girls squeezed his hands tightly for strength. The high priestess raised her staff in silence, swept over the crowd. She spoke in the ancient tongue, and then in slow, careful words that Ryan could understand, she asked if the three had completed the trial with honor and truth. Nara stepped forward and bowed her head. She said they had faced every challenge together, that no heart had turned away and no promise had been broken. Vexa lifted her chin and declared that she had never trusted anyone before, but now she trusted both Nara and Ryan with her life. The crowd began to murmur as the high priestess walked slowly around them, her sharp eyes searching for any sign of weakness. She stopped in front of Ryan and asked him to speak from his heart. Ryan felt the pressure of the moment, but also the courage that had grown inside him during the trial. He told the truth in simple words. He said he had come to Zylara as a stranger, not knowing what to expect, but he had found not one, but two hearts that called to him in different ways. He told them he could never choose only One because both Nara and Vexa had saved him in ways no one else could. High Priestess listened in silence, and then asked the crowd to judge not with old laws, but with new eyes. She reminded them that the purpose of the trial was to test unity and strengthen what these three had done had never been seen before. A new path for love and trust was now open before all four. A long moment nobody spoke. Then an elder stepped forward and said he had watched the three from afar and seen nothing but courage and honesty. Others followed, agreeing that if the old story spoke of unity, then perhaps this was the unity they had waited for at last. The High Priestess smiled for the first time and declared that the trial had been passed, not just in body but in spirit, and that a new tradition would begin on this day. Nara and Vexa both let out a breath of relief as the High Priestess placed silver bands around their wrists, linking them together, and she gave Ryan a woven crown of bright jungle flowers, a symbol of welcome and belonging. The village erupted into cheers and song, the people dancing and laughing, as if the old fears and rules had melted away with the dawn. A great feast was held under the sky that night, with music, food, and glowing lanterns floating above the crowd. Ryan sat between Nara and Vexa, holding their hands and watching the stars above. He listened to their laughter and their dreams for the future, and felt more at home than he ever had on Earth or anywhere else. He realized that his journey had not only changed him, but also the world around him, and that sometimes the bravest thing was to trust love, even when it came in an unexpected way. Later, as the crowd drifted away and the fire burned low, the three found themselves alone at the edge of the village, looking out over the sleeping land. Nara leaned on Ryan's shoulder and whispered that she would stay by his side no matter what. Vexa smiled her wild, fierce smile and promised to protect their family forever. Ryan looked at both girls, his heart full, and said he could not imagine a life without either of them. They had become his home as the first light of the next day touched the village. Ryan, Nara, and Vexa stood hand in hand, ready to begin a new chapter, not just for themselves, but for all who would come after. Their story would be told as a legend, not just of trials and danger, but of the courage to build something new from three hearts that refused to let go. And as they walked together into the light, they knew their journey had only just begun.